The Dendera Zodiac is an ancient Egyptian calendar and a sky map that is dedicated to Osiris, the god of agriculture. The cult of Osiris was primarily an agrarian society who founded the science of agricultural astrology. Coded within the sacred calendar is the story of Osiris, which coincides with the agricultural yearly cycle that was divided into 3 seasons of flooding, growing, and harvest. The first season of flooding, known as Akhet in the ancient Egyptian language, was aligned with the summer solstice and was celebrated with a New Year's festival known as Wapet Renpet, which means the opening of the year and commemorates the renewal of the Nile flood and the spiritual rebirth of Osiris. The Orion constellation corresponds with the god king Osiris, who civilized Egypt by introducing agriculture. The main spirit animal of Osiris is a bull called Apis, which corresponds with the Taurus constellation. One full moon night, the evil brother of Osiris called Set transformed into a wild bull and drowned Osiris in the Nile River, which corresponds with the Eridanus constellation. The corpse of Osiris was carried out to sea, where it was swallowed by a whale, which corresponds with the Cetus constellation. When Isis, the queen of Egypt, and her sister Nephthys was informed about the death of Osiris, they began to weep, and their tears fell to earth like a volley of arrows. Isis is equated with the Nubian goddess called Satis, who is said to use her bow to eject arrows of water into the Nile. This is an allegory for the monsoons of Ethiopia that cause the Nile to flood each year. The new year was preceded by the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, which is depicted between the horns of a divine cow known as Mahet Waret, which means the Great Flood. Sirius is personified as a goddess called Sopdet, whose name means the sharp one or triangular one, alluding to her association with an arrow of Satis. The goddess Nephthys is equated with a sister of Satis called Anuket, who aided with the flooding of the Nile by pouring water from her sacred jars, and for this reason has a festival dedicated to her. The festival of Anuket began when the Nile started to flood and offerings were thrown into the Nile in appreciation for its life-giving water. The corpse of Osiris remained within the belly of a whale for a number of days before being expectorated upon the banks of the Nile. This is an allegory for the black fertile silt, which symbolizes the body of Osiris being deposited from the flood. When Isis found the corpse of Osiris, she extracted the seed from his phallus and placed it within her womb. Isis symbolizes the soil along the riverbank, which is impregnated by the rich silt to create a perfect environment for the plowing process to begin. The Big Dipper, also known as the Plow constellation, is depicted as a bull's thigh and is associated with Set, who after inheriting the throne ravaged the country, which is an allegory for the plowing of soil. The furrows made within the fertile soil symbolize the womb of Isis, while the seeds that are sown symbolize the seed of Osiris. Isis corresponds with the Virgo constellation, which is depicted as a virgin holding an ear of grain that symbolizes the phallus of Osiris that contains his seed. The corpse of Osiris was placed upon a ship, which corresponds with the Argo Navis constellation, and Osiris was transported through the gates of the underworld, which are guarded by the lion deity called Akkar, who corresponds with the Leo constellation. The ship of Osiris was navigated by Nephthys in her form of a crow, which corresponds with the Corvus constellation. The journey of Osiris into the underworld was commemorated with a celebration known as the Wag Festival. During this festival, people made small paper boats that were sailed from the eastern bank to the west, signifying the journey of Osiris and their deceased loved ones into the afterlife. When Osiris entered the underworld, he plundered the keys of death from the evil serpent called Apep, who corresponds with the Hydra constellation. Osiris was established as the judge of the dead and liberated all the souls of the dead who had been imprisoned from the beginning of time. The Lupus constellation corresponds with Anubis the wolf, who weighs the hearts of the dead upon the scales of justice, which corresponds with the Libra constellation. The souls of the unrighteous are tormented by the goddess Amit, who corresponds with the Centaurus constellation. Amit lives within the eternal lake of fire, which is depicted as the Crux constellation. The plundering of the underworld is an allegory for the harrowing of soil after it has been ploughed, and is commemorated on the first new moon after the autumnal equinox with a celebration known as the Festival of Lights. During this festival, lamps are lit to symbolize the spiritual victory of light over darkness and good over evil. The birth of Horus was signified by the rising of a morning star, known as Subtu in the ancient Egyptian language. When Set saw the star of Horus rising in the east, he went on a hunt to destroy the divine egg containing Horus. So Isis, in her form of a falcon, flew to the swamps of the Nile and nested within a papyrus boat, which is associated with the Corona Australis constellation. Horus emerged from the egg on a winter solstice, but a scorpion of Set found Horus and paralyzed him with a sting to his right eye, also known as his solar eye. The Orpheus constellation corresponds with the solar boat of Ra, which was traveling across the heavens, but came to a standstill while Horus was paralyzed. So Ra summoned the goddess Serket, who healed Horus after being paralyzed for 3 days. Then Ra continued with his journey across the heavens. The resurrection of Horus was commemorated 3 days after the winter solstice, which coincides with the Christmas festival. During the festival, offerings were placed under an acacia tree, which is sacred to Horus. The Draco constellation is depicted as a hippo and corresponds with the goddess Tararet, who is the consort of Set, and she secretly reared Horus in the swamps until he became Horus the Elder, which corresponds with the Hercules constellation. The birth and growth of Horus is an allegory for the germination of seeds and the second season of growing, known as Peret in the ancient Egyptian language. Horus went into a battle with Set to avenge his father's death. During the battle, Set injured the left eye of Horus, and in retaliation, Horus made Set infertile by severing his testicles. Horus also cut off the head of Set and replaced it with the head of a wild donkey, which corresponds with the Hercules constellation. The eye of Horus was healed on a full moon night and offered to Osiris, who resurrected from the realm of the dead. Osiris then ascended into paradise, known as the Field of Reeds, which corresponds with the square of the Pegasus constellation and symbolizes the third season of harvest, known as Shemu in the ancient Egyptian language. The resurrection of Osiris is commemorated on the first full moon after the spring equinox and coincides with the Easter festival. During this festival, pigs which represents Set, was sacrificed to Osiris